welcome to the Pages of Light podcast, your destination for discussions of popular fantasy and science fiction novels from a Christian worldview. My name is Tyler, and with me, as always, is Gabriel, aka the Quarantine Quartermaster. Welcome back to the podcast, Gabe. How you doing?
Oh, doing interesting today. It was an interesting day at school, so I hope I'm here and present for the podcast.
That's good. I'm sure if God shows up, we'll show up. So there we go.
That's right.
All right, very good. So today we're going to be continuing our discussion of The Wheel of Time, Book 3, The Dragon Reborn. So we'll be, at the end of last episode, we stopped at around chapter 32, which is when a lot of the characters had started to make their journey toward Tyr, from wherever other location they were in the world. And so that is where we left our heroes, and we will be continuing in their story until the end of the book. And yeah, looking forward to it. As always, you can follow Pages of Light on social media, and you can check out our website, pagesoflight.com, for all the stuff happening with Pages of Light. So, all right. How you feeling with the second half of the book? That was pretty good.
I think, it's definitely interesting following the different pathways to get to Tyr, and everyone's got their own unique journey. And I think I really came to like Perrin Ibarra as a person. Just he's standing up for what's right, and he's very steadfast. And then Matt's revealing more of his gambler nature as the book unfolds. So we're getting more into his storyline. So yeah, it's good to kind of see these characters unfold, and that's why we're not seeing Rand as much as we are building out the world through the other characters. And we do like get these snippets of Rand, but he's like kind of going crazy.
As the Dragon Reborn is said to do. So
destined
that
to
is
be
within his character.
Mm-hmm.
All right, before we jump into the story discussion, I don't think last week we actually did a favorite quote, so we're gonna bring that back this week. So I have a quote. It's not really very profound at all, but I just thought it was funny. So my quote is from Matt, and I think this is when he's in Camelin and they're at some kind of inn or something, and he sees Loyal, or not Loyal. I don't remember. Oh, he's remembering Loyal told him something about books, and he says he never did seem to get around to reading the books he meant to read. And I just thought that's like basically my life. There's so many books to read, and I'm never gonna get to all of the ones that I want to read. So that just made me think of my own life as Matt is remembering that. So I just thought it was funny.
I think we can all identify with that. Like, there's always something that you meant to do and then just never did it. Matt's always seeming like he's pursuing the more hedonistic things in life. He's just like, I'll do what makes me feel good, like causing chaos in my little Two Rivers town instead of reading books.
Although Matt is interesting because, as we'll see in this section of the book, he does stuff like he'll say stuff to himself like, I think this way, but then he'll act a completely different way. So he's interesting like that.
I'm gonna have to hear your observation on that. That'll be good.
Yeah. So, all right, that's my quote. Did you have anything?
I had a quote. I don't have it verbatim. Perrin goes into a town and he starts the question with why. I think he's asking about, I don't remember exactly, but I think he's asking about why is the Aielman in a cage, or why is there a man in the cage?
Sure.
And he starts out with the question why, and then he changes it. He says the word why, and then he says how, something like, how has a man like been trapped in the cage? So he changes his direction mid-flow. And I think I talked about Chris Voss's book, Never Split the Difference, last week, and that is one of the tactics that he uses in the book. So this was a very interesting observation that he made. He said that the word why, when directed at a person, triggers defensiveness. Why did you do that?
Yeah.
Like, what made you do, or like, why did you break the thing? And it automatically triggers defensiveness in a person. And he instructs the reader to use how questions, because he wants you to ask open-ended questions because it leads to revealing more information. And it also takes the antagonism out of like the questioning. Yeah. And so that was the quote that like spoke to me, and I know I didn't get it right. So if you find the quote, tell us in the comments what it actually was supposed to be, so we can revisit that. But yeah, so I just like that, and I just like try to use that because I know for me that if someone's like, "Why did you do this?" I do feel that instinctual like defensiveness. Mm-hmm. Like you have to defend like your reasoning and stuff. So yep. I keep that in mind. And then like when I talk to people, I try and not use the why kind of accusation towards them. So that was the quote that spoke to me this week.
Cool. Very good. Good to have the favorite quote back in the podcast.
We were a little rusty last time.
That's okay. Right. It's been a few months. Listen to the other podcasts where we talk about what we were doing for 7 months or whatever. All right. So let's jump into book discussion. So starting off with chapter 33 is where we pick up from last podcast, and this is where our characters. So we have 3 groups of people that we're following. We have Perrin, Lan, Moraine, and Loyal, and they are basically following Rand, and they're tracking him to Tyr, and so they're kind of following in his path. And then we have the 3 girls. We have Egwene, Elaine, and Nynaeve, and they are tracking the Black Aja, based on I guess an order or a charge. I don't know what you would call it, from the Amyrlin Seat.
Amyrlin Seat, yep.
Yeah, so she wants them to hunt down the Black Aja because she thinks that they're the only people she can trust. And so they are making their way to Tyr as well because they are tracking the Black Aja, and that's where the Black Aja went. I can't remember specifically why they knew that they were going to Tyr. I think did it have something to do with the Tel'aran'rhiod, where they saw something in a dream.
I feel like there was some information. Yeah, I can't remember if Egwene revealed that from like her trip to Tel'aran'rhiod. Yeah, they figured it out, and they know that they're going to Tyr and that they are trying to set a trap for someone.
The Black Aja is setting a trap. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's what they know, so they're kind of like on their heels, trying to get there as quickly as possible.
Yeah. And then our last group we have is Matt and Tom. And so Matt and Tom are... So Matt is initially going to Caemlyn because Elaine gives him a letter to give to her mother, who is the queen who lives in Caemlyn. And so Matt is going there. And then after they get to Caemlyn, I can't remember specifically why he remembers that, or he feels compelled to go to Tyr. I know she thinks that Egwene is in danger or something like that, and he has to go and save her. He hears something about the Black Aja or something like that.
Yeah, so he and Tom get on the first boat that they see, and then they pay lots of money to go as fast as they can to Caemlyn. And so he has to drop the letter off, and he breaks into the palace the same way that Rand did over this wall, which was kind of funny. That
call back to book one.
We really need to fix this wall.
I love that quote.
And so his luck comes into play because we know Matt is now lucky, and he overhears a conversation between like a lord and his servant, and he tells him basically that he wants Elaine killed And then the two others that kind of as an afterthought, he's like, you have to have them killed. And you know who that is? It's Gabriel, Morghese's like hot stuff new man who just came out and was like, I'm going to help run the army and take back the things for you, Morghese.
Yeah.
And there's something fishy about this Gabriel guy, because not only is he my namesake, but when he arrives on the scene, everyone starts having bad dreams. And we know where else there's bad dreams in the future in this book, and they're in Tyr. So I found that interesting. Matt overhears the conversation. He's going to tell Morghese, and then he recognizes Gabriel when he comes up there and stands next to Morghese, and she's like in love with him, and she's like he has her eating out of his palm, so to speak. And so Matt's like, I'm not going to tell her that the person that she's like infatuated with is trying to kill her daughter. And he's like, I have to go to Tyr and save these blasted women, I think is kind of how he's thinking about it. And that's why he, I think the guy's name is Komar. And that's why he's on a path to Tyr after Camelin.
Awesome. Yeah, so eventually through various scenarios and situations, all of our characters are converging on Tyr. And so that's essentially what happens in this second half of the book here, is all of our characters make their way to Tyr by the end for the final climactic scene with Rand and the sword of Kalandor. Kalandor? How did the audiobook people say it? Because they're always right.
Yeah, Kalandor. All
right. I'll probably mispronounce that throughout the whole podcast. But
it's so hard when you read a book, and even like when I read books, like I delegate that as like the O name. Like if I can't like pronounce the whole thing, I'm like, oh, that's the O name. Okay,
yeah,
so
you just shorten it in your head or something.
Yeah, mentally just like I've given up on trying to actually pronounce it, and I just like run with it. So it's hard to undo those neurological pathways you've like reinforced after like months of reading.
At least in this book, if you have the physical paperback, there is at the back like a glossary with all like a bunch of key terms and stuff. So a lot of them, like the big names and stuff, that'll have like the phonetic spelling of it, so you can kind of understand how to pronounce it correctly. But not everything is in there. So some things are still, you just have to guess or think how best you think it would sound. Anyways, digression on epic fantasy name pronunciations. All right, so so we're starting out with Perrin, Lan, Moraine, and Loyal, and they arrive in this town called Remen. And this is where you mentioned in your quote they spot that Aiel who is in the cage, which I guess is also a reference to Min's vision that she told Perrin before they had been separated. And I think Min goes back to the White Tower, if I'm not mistaken, after they go off to find Rand. And then also in this chapter we have Perrin noticing a girl, again another name. I was always pronouncing this one Faeli. That's probably wrong. Fael.
Am I? No. Now I'm like worried that I'm mixing up Aiel and Fael. Fael. I think it's Fael.
Fael. That sounds better than Faeli.
Yeah, Fael.
I like when we get
Let's
her.
Let's go with Fael right now.
I like when we get her real name, which is Zareen. And so I just remember her as Zareen because I can't pronounce that other word, even though she likes to be called by the Fael, which means falcon. Is that what it means? Pretty sure.
I can't remember if it. I know that her original name means something like a great beauty. And
Zareen does. Yeah,
and as like a fighter, she doesn't like that name, so she has taken up her own mantle as Fael.
Yeah, and so she is like I think she's what's called a hunter, because she's hunting for the Horn of Valir. And so she sees this group of interesting looking people come into the town, and she's like, you guys might be have something going on. I might want to follow you around. And so she kind of gets added to their party because she thinks they might lead her to the horn, which they won't, but at least not in this book. But she's certainly in for an interesting turn of events because she decides to follow them.
Yep, and this is also part of Min's prediction that
yes,
Perrin has 2 people on his shoulders. I think it was like a falcon and maybe like a hawk. So
yes.
we are interested, or she becomes the falcon.
Yep.
So Min knew that whoever this falcon person was going to stay with Perrin, and their dynamic is interesting. He's like. Yep. He doesn't want her there, and she is like 100% determined to follow, no matter what anyone says, no matter what Perrin, Moraine, or Lan says. She's determined to follow. And then Moraine says to Perrin, she's like, "Well, you're responsible for her." And Perrin's like, "What, me? Why me?"
I think it's in a later chapter too. Like Moraine, like some revelation happens, and Moraine is like, "Hey, this is your last chance. If you're gonna stay with us, like, there's no turning back at this point." And she's like, "All right, I'm in the party, for good or for good or ill."
Yep.
So it shows her,
and it's right before the big reveal. Yeah, because Lan, like, she gets several outs. Lan is like, "You don't have to be here, and I'll take your oath if you swear not to say anything. You can leave now if you want." And she's like, "Nope." She continually makes the choice to be with the group, even though they're all like, "Get out of here."
Yeah, I mean, that means Min's visions are correct. So even though she could have left, she decides to stay, and that makes her visions completely true. I had one thing in this chapter that I wanted to chat about. I have a quote that I put in here. It's on, if you have the paperback, it's on page 331. And this is just like an excerpt from the quote. And it's Perrin talking to Moiraine about the pattern, essentially. And he says, "That's evil, Moiraine. I can't believe that Rand is evil." Because he's basically, what's happening is they're following Rand, and because Rand is Ta'veren and the Dragon Reborn, he shapes the pattern like around himself, and so wherever he goes, like, crazy things happen. Like in the first town, there was a ton of weddings. In Remen, I can't remember the specific thing that happens, but it was not good because this is why Perrin is talking about why he can't believe that Rand is evil, because the pattern was shaping around him and something bad happened in this town. I think it was like the Aiel, did the Aiel attack or something like that? And that's they captured that Aiel guy. I think it was something else, like though. I can't remember.
Yeah, I think it was something else though. There's like this, I'm calling him like a false nobleman. He was like, I got 20 Aiel, I killed a bunch of them, and they hide their numbers, and then
he was like, the fish was this big.
Yeah, and Perrin goes up to the guy in the cage. What's his name? Starts with a G, and he lets him out, and he's like, "It was me and one other Aiel against like 10 of them," and they're like, "We were off our game, basically. They shouldn't have been able to like take us out."
Yeah. But yeah, I thought that was an interesting quote because I was just thinking about you can kind of see the pattern in the Wheel of Time similar to like the will of God, and how like the pattern is like the outworking of like a higher power's will in the world. And so I just thought that was interesting because, you know, people have different opinions on the will of God, and you know how you have people who are like, why would God let X thing happen? You know, bad things happen to good people, and you know that's just part of the will of God, and he uses all things for the good of his own purposes, and it might not seem like it's good for us, and things might seem evil, but that's just God's will, and we have to kind of learn to accept that, even though we might not understand the full picture of what's happening. And I feel like the pattern is kind of similar in that respect, where like you see things, the pattern maybe doing things in certain people's lives or in different areas, and you don't understand why this would happen. But yeah, I just thought it was an interesting kind of out of a parallel. It's not like a direct comparison, but yeah, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I did. I was just trying to look up something really quickly, because you talked about the will of God, and that is like one of the main arguments of from Christianity, like, why do bad things happen to good people? And I think the response to that is bad things happen to good people because they're surrounded by people. We are all sinners, and like then they're like, on top of us being all sinners, like everyone will let you down.
Yeah.
Every single person. There is only one entity in the universe that will not let you down, and that is God. Every other person that you've ever met or will meet, they will let you down at some point. I mean, if you have an ongoing relationship with them, if you just bump into it one time, they don't have a chance to let you down. But if you have a long ongoing relationship with someone, they will let you down. So that's one thing, is that we're surrounded by people, and then there's also evil people who do evil things, and that's their choice. And my hope is to be as far away from those people as possible, and like kind of and I feel bad for little kids who like live in bad neighborhoods and who have no choice of like being near drugs and guns and other implements of chaos. They have no choice. And we live in a fallen world. And then you also need to avoid prosperity gospel. Like if you listen to God and do things to God, like your life will be amazing and great. Like it says there will be hardship. It's not if there's hardship, it says when there is hardship. And I think that's when your true faith comes into play. Like, do you dig into God, or do you say, God, why did you get all angry at him? And like, and I've I've lost my job and I've been out afloat, and God has always seen fit to draw me back. And so I'm learning to trust him more and more. I have those times where I'm just like not feeling it, not understanding what God wants in my life, but it's coming together for me. So I think we need to avoid that. And then one more idea, you were talking about the will of God. So there's actually a book called The Four Wills of God by Emerson Eggerichs. And I read it. Again, it was one of those like quick reads where I listened to it. And basically, like, there are many things within the will of God's, and I was trying to find a quick list on what the four are. But you can do the will of God if you're fulfilling these four things.
The four wills of God.
Yeah, the four wills of God. Like, does it have biblical backing?
What are the four wills of God? It says, believe in Jesus, abstain from sexual sin, give thanks in everything, and submit in doing right. Does that sound familiar?
That sounds familiar, yep. So if you are, like, the story in that book was something like his daughter was going to college and she was trying to decide what God wanted in her life, and he was saying that, like, if you're submitting to God, if you're doing these things, I think this is from it. There was definitely a college involved, but like if you go to this one, you can be doing the will of God, and if you're going to this one, you can be doing the will of God, as long as you are fulfilling these four wills. So as long as you're like looking to God and like following those rules, you can act within the will of God in several ways. And that's because we're all one big, like all Christians are part of the quote unquote God machine. Like we're like his hands and feet. We move things, and if you move into a new space, you bring the light of God. You give to people. You know, sacrifice things of yourself to make that situation better. That's what God calls us to do, and that's why you can fulfill the will of God no matter where you are. Like, you know, I'm a teacher, and I try to fulfill it by being patient with my students and like putting a lot into my job and inspiring like kids. And I don't have nearly as much sway as like someone in like the business hierarchy who like connects with Fortune 500 companies and like knows all these CEOs and stuff. But even any position, you can work in the will of God and just where you're called to do that.
Yeah.
Sorry, went off on a rant there.
No, that's okay. Yeah, I just thought it was an interesting potential parallel there, because it's not that like God uses people to like enact his will in the world, and people are inherently sinful.
Correct.
So people may like be doing the will of God in an imperfect way, if that makes sense. So you won't always like, obviously if God wants you, like if God has you in a certain place to do something, you're not going to do it perfectly, and you're going to mess up and you're going to hurt people along the way. But God can still use you to accomplish his purposes, even though you're an imperfect person. So just, that's an encouragement. Like, you're not going to always do things the way God would want you to do them, but that's okay. He's still going to be able to use you, and you just have to be willing to be used and not like completely reject what God wants you, or what God wants you to be doing. So
if you missed it, guys, Varum told you you're going to mess up.
That's right. You just have to be okay with it.
Yeah. No, but I like what you said, that it's about listening to God. And then like sometimes those near misses, like, like one time sometimes when I drive past homeless people, I'm like, man, I wish I had like $10 to like give this guy. Yeah. And so like in weeks, like I do this regularly, like maybe once or like once a month or once every other month, I'll go to the ATM and take out like 50 or $100 and just have it in 10s or 20s, because I see like 4 homeless people a day on my drive, like two in the morning, 2 in the afternoon. And I like to have just some money to give them. And I know like I have a few that I see regularly, and you know, I try and have a little conversation. Like I'm driving by them in a car. If I hit a stoplight, I can talk to them. But you know, I'm in James right now, and it talks about like if a person like looks all like dressed up and they come to church, and you're like, oh, sit in the front row, and then like a homeless person comes in and you're like, oh, sit back here, we don't want you like intermingling with our church family. It's like, are you really trusting in God? And like what you do to the least is what you do to God. So I'm always trying to see the need and provide for them, because like I only see 4 homeless people a day. Like some people go and they do like soup kitchens and stuff, but I like pouring into the same people. I think like several of them I've like given money to, and then I don't see them anymore, and I just kind of hope and pray that they're out there like now they might have a job or something. I gave this one guy a really nice backpack. He was very thankful.
Yeah, that has a lot of utility.
Yeah. Especially for a homeless person, where all their belongings go inside of it. Yeah. He's like, don't buy a new one. If you have one laying around, do it. So I gave it to him, and then I bought a nice backpack that I really like. So it worked out for everybody.
Yeah, it's good you were able to give something to somebody else.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on in our story, or we will be here all night, since we basically just talked about the first chapter. So
here we go. Best.
Yeah, so basically the next sections we have Perrin, the guy in the IU in the cage, his name is Gaul, Gaul.
That's it. Gaul.
So you were correct saying it is a G name. So he goes and he frees Gaul, and there's a bunch of white cloaks that show up, and then they just basically kill them all. And
Yep.
I guess is it because Perrin has the wolf blood that he's such a good warrior? Because I don't know if it's like really been established that he's like that great of a swordsman, unless he's been training with Lan a lot since he's been with him. I don't know. Sometimes I just feel like is it completely justified that these kids from the Two Rivers are like killing trained white cloak soldiers? I don't know how realistic that is, but I guess I just chalk it up to like he's Taverin and he's got the wolf blood and he's special or whatever. So
Yeah, I think that is it. I think he's slowly like changing into, whoever he's meant to be in the Wheel of Time.
Sure.
Because like at the end of that section, he was like looking at his room that he rented, and he was like, there was not even a trace that he had been there. He was like, there was no water in the bucket over there, that not a sheet was out of place. And he was just saying, as of late, like I seem to be not leaving a mark, which is kind of like, I feel like the way of the wolf, the way of stealthiness.
Sure.
And so I just feel like he's like, I think it is the wolf blood, and I think he's got like these preternatural powers, I guess. And he's
maybe he has like
with his axe.
an enhanced wolf reflexes or whatever. But anyways, that was cool. And then so basically he kills all the white cloaks, and basically they just have to run because they think the townspeople are gonna get all mad, and then there's gonna be more white cloaks to come. Because I think one of them get away? Maybe not. I can't remember. But anyways, they have to leave.
I think he was paranoid because Fael was watching him, although he didn't know it was Fael.
That's right. Yes. But she joins them, and I think it's funny. There's a few times in this half of the book where they get somewhere and they're like, "Oh, we're finally gonna get to rest and chill," and then they're like, "Nope, we gotta go." And then I always feel like they have to come in on Loyal, and Loyal is just like sitting there writing in his notebook, and he's like, "We gotta go," and he's like, "You humans are always so hasty," I feel like Loyal is like Treebeard from Lord of the Rings. He's like, "Don't be hasty." But they're always making Loyal stop his writing and come off on all of their adventures, and Loyal's just along for the ride because he's trying to document all the stuff from a historical perspective.
I think his first words are, "But we just got here."
That's right. I just thought that was funny. Loyal is like some comic relief a little bit in this story whenever there's like insane stuff happening. Yes. So we continue on with Perrin. He in the next chapter. So basically, they leave Remen, and this is when Fael, however you say it.
Yeah, Fael.
Zareen. This is when Zareen joins them.
There you go.
And Perrin has some more wolf dreams, and this is where I think he meets Rand in one of his dreams, and Rand attacks him, and so Perrin has to like escape the dream.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there's just more dream stuff. We talked a lot about the dream type things in the last podcast, if you want to go back and listen to that. But I'm sure we'll talk about more dream stuff in this episode as well, because there's just a lot of dream stuff, because we have Perrin with his wolf dreams, and then we have Egwene using her Angreal to be like a dream walker, so she can. It's like almost like a dream dimension. It's like an alternate kind of meeting place where people can interact with each other. So super interesting.
Yeah, and I think that the wolf dream is Tel-Iran Riyadh.
Seems that way. Yeah,
yeah,
because it's like the same.
Perrin
It's essentially the same
past.
power, and he has Hopper as like a god in this dreamland. The wolf that died in was it the last book? I think
it was the first book where
was it the first book?
I think him and Egwene get taken after right before they're with the Tinkerers.
Yeah, they get captured by the White Cloaks.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's like when Perrin gets taken is when Hopper dies. And I think that's the first book.
Yeah.
But I could be wrong.
No, yeah, I think you're right. I think that is the first book. because that's when he goes into that first. That's the first time he goes into that wolf rage, and he kills the 2 white cloaks, and that's why they capture him.
As they would say in Supernatural, he wolfed out.
He wolfed out. Supernatural. That how many seasons of that is there? There's like 15 seasons or something insane.
Yep, it's epic.
I see it on Netflix.
I dropped off around season 10.
Season 10.
But I enjoyed it. Yeah.
I've seen the first episode, I think, where they have that woman on the bridge. I don't know if you probably don't remember it because it's the.
Oh, I remember it, and also in the first episode they have. It was in Stranger Things in like season 4, like the person like up on the ceiling.
Up
and
on
they were
the
all
ceiling.
like, yeah, that happened in the first season or the first episode of Supernatural, and it was like the season opener for season 4 of Stranger Things.
Yes.
And I was like, this is creepy, but I've definitely seen this before in Supernatural.
Season 4 of Stranger Things is legit, though, if you haven't seen it.
Oh, yeah. You know what? We haven't finished it. We watched, because they did that double release of the ending. Because it was like super epic long, like a motion picture release for the last 2 episodes. So I think we haven't watched the last one yet. It just kind of got...
I won't spoil the ending then,
busy.
But... Season 4 is definitely the best season of the show, I would say.
Yeah. It all speaks to me. I like all seasons in their own way.
But it's good. There was one
thing... But we digress.
Yeah, we digress. Sorry for short horror TV show side quest thing, whatever you want to call it.
Yes.
But in this chapter, so... In Perrin's wolf dream, he sees Lanfear talking to Baalzamon, and Lanfear is basically like not doing what Baalzamon wants her to do, essentially. And I think part of this, there was a quote that I wrote down. It just says, "To fail the great Lord of the Dark cannot be forgiven." And I just thought that was interesting because we have a contrast between, like I was thinking, like a contrast between the Dark One in this book, where if you fail the Dark One, you cannot get forgiveness. But in Christianity, you know, it's that's part of the whole narrative of Christianity, is that you will fail and you are not enough, but that Jesus was enough for you. And so you can receive forgiveness. And that's a lot of the point of Christianity, is through the blood of Christ, you can be forgiven from your sins. And I thought that was an interesting contrast of like the inability to be forgiven by the Dark One, and, you know, the imperative to be forgiven in Christianity. So I don't know. That was just an interesting parallel that I saw there.
Yeah, no, that's an astute observation. And I think it says in the Bible that we must forgive others or we will not be forgiven.
Right.
And, you know, I think of the like blister analogy when it comes to forgiveness. Like, you have all this stuff bottled up inside, and like the only person you're hurting is yourself because you haven't like taken the opportunity to forgive someone. When you forgive someone, it actually helps you. And like, if you have all this stuff festering inside of you, like people who hold grudges and stuff, like it's supposed, like, if you pop the blister and all the stuff comes out, all the ooze and all the pus, like it gets it out of you, and you cannot do that if you don't forgive, because otherwise it'll just stay inside of you and mount up. And and I worry about that because like I haven't had the easiest path. I've been, you know, kicked out of groups, and like I look back at that and like, why did you kick me out of this group? And like I have trouble, like even like 5 years later, like looking at these people that I see, and I'm like, you didn't have to kick us out of the group, and it was very embarrassing, and I worry that I haven't forgiven them enough, and I'm not going to be forgiven. So like I pray on it. Sometimes I get like really good about it, and I'll pray on it. Like that was when it first happened. I was working on it, and I wonder if in my heart I've forgiven them, because sometimes I see them and I'm like, ugh.
Yeah, I mean, forgiveness is something I think a lot of us struggle with, especially if it's like something, really personal or like a deep relationship that was harmed or something like that. It's just hard to, forgive the person if you feel like justice wasn't like achieved, I guess. So yeah, it's just
or a miscarriage. I felt like it was a miscarriage of justice for us.
Sure.
I was just like,
yeah,
felt let down.
Yeah, I mean, we don't. Yeah, I mean, God doesn't have to forgive us, but it's he wants to forgive us out of his love for us. So because of that, we should be the ones who are forgiving, because what is it? We love because he first loved us. I think that passage, wherever that is, I can't remember, but love has a lot to do with forgiveness. It's like, in order to love someone, like, you have to be willing to forgive them, or like, I don't think you can have like true love without some level of forgiveness, because that person's always gonna mess up and they're gonna need your forgiveness, and if you can't forgive them, then you're like, the relationship is just gonna be completely severed. So,
and we wonder why there's so many marriages that end in divorce, because people can't forgive and they want their own way.
Yeah,
that happens
all too often. It does happen. All right, so let's jump on to the next section. So I think we jump over here to the Egwene, Elaine, Nynaeve sections, and so they're basically they get on a boat, if I'm not mistaken, from the White Tower, and they're basically just sailing down. If you look at a map, you can see the rivers that go down from Tarvalon down to Tyr. And maybe if I'm being fancy, I'll put up a map on the video version if you haven't seen a map of the Wheel of Time. I thought it was interesting, actually, as a very short side quest, that the map, I haven't been able to find like the name of the continent that the world is on. All the maps just say like the Wheel of Time, like, and there's no, like, in the Stormlight Archive from Brandon Sanderson, the continent is called Roshar, and within Roshar you have all the different places and cities and such, but I don't know what the actual world is called in the Wheel of Time. It's just called the Wheel of Time map. So just thought that was interesting. If maybe there isn't a name. Yeah, maybe there isn't.
It's just like, maybe there's just localities and there isn't like a name for like the whole place.
Yeah, if I'm wrong, you can leave a comment and tell me what the actual name of the world is, because I would love to know.
Because like in Lord of the Rings, it's like
it's Middle Earth. Yeah, right. Actually, Middle Earth technically is a certain part of the world, if you want to be very technical about it. And there's other parts of the world.
Be technical.
Okay. Technical. Let's be specific here. If you actually, you can't see in the video, but if you look on the top of this bookshelf, I have like I call it my Tolkien shrine, because it sounds like so worshipful, but this is what it is essentially. So I have like these like special bookends that my wife got me one year for my birthday, I think it was, and they're just like, if you remember the shot in Lord of the Rings with the Fellowship like walking, and it's just like their silhouettes on like a bookend. But I have all my Lord of the Rings books up there, and one of them is the Atlas of Middle Earth, and so it has all the maps from the different ages and all that kind of stuff. I haven't really looked at it recently, but I used to be like really into all of the Lord of the Rings stuff and reading the books. I need to read like the Silmarillion, and I've read some of the other ones like the Unfinished Tales and some of the Great Tales, like the Children of Hurin is really good, actually. That's a first age tale, but I need to get back in, because I'm watching Rings of Power, the Amazon show. I don't know if you've seen it or not.
My wife has watched it. I have not. She said she really enjoyed it.
Oh, she did enjoy it?
Yeah.
Well, that's good for her. I really don't like it that much. So, but yeah, I'm glad that she can enjoy it. I will say one cool thing about it is just seeing like the landscape shots and just the different places depicted, especially seeing how things end up in later on in the series, like with the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So seeing how things were before all of those events took place. That's been really fun to see. So that's one plus for the show, I'll say. And the music's pretty good too. Okay, sorry, that was a longer side quest than I intended, but that's okay.
We're all about some side quests right now. And I'll just say that my love of Lord of the Rings was, I think in middle school, my parents got me an encyclopedia. So it had like Smaug and like the Balrog and like all these different like creatures and monsters. And like, I just remember having that book, and like the artwork was like fantastic. Yeah. Like mid 90s artwork. It was like real good.
Yeah. My entry was the Peter Jackson trilogy. So like once I saw that, I was just in whole hog. I was just all in it. So yeah. Lord of the Rings nerds, sound off in the comments. Let us know how much you love Lord of the Rings. Okay. So they're going down to Tyr with a boat, and I don't feel like a ton of stuff happens with the Egwene kind of storyline. The one big thing that happens is they meet some of the Aiel. There's a character named Avienda that shows up because they like get off the boat for a little bit, I think, and they meet like this group of Aiel, and there's one guy who's wounded, and Nynaeve is able to heal him through her special
like
power.
I can only get angry and heal people sort of power.
Yep. I can't remember what she was angry about to do the healing this time. But anyways, she heals them, or that guy. And then I think in the next time they see him, he actually dies. So I can't remember.
Yeah, that's they're like captured.
Yeah.
And then they're about to be sold, and they're like, oh, who's ever like, and then they gave them like a drug to put them to sleep, but it actually ended up like taking away their headaches, and they woke up, and then they're gonna come out guns blazing, and then they're about to be sold, and they're being sold to Murdral, and the Murdral are like, these are the ones we seek, and there's like 3 of them, and then the Aiel come in and they dance the spears, and then they have the Murdral surrounded, and then boom, balefire right at the Murdral. Cinders, turns them to ash.
Yeah.
And
the Aiel
I think,
sweet.
Yeah, and they're like, we could have danced the spears, but we would have. There were like 5 of them and 3 Murdral, and so the Aiel were saying that they would have taken heavy losses, but they would have won.
Yeah.
In those odds, which shows you how powerful they are, because a Murdral can kill like a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah. In the TV show, there's that one scene, that opening scene where with the Rand's mother fighting off in that war zone in the winter.
Oh yeah.
That was an epic scene, because that was like our first introduction to the Aiel in the show. That scene was pretty epic.
That's like one scene that sticks out to me from like watching it last year. It's just like that white background and her just running, and then like halfway through the scene you're like, she's pregnant.
And she's still laying waste
womping
to all
on
these
some
people.
guys.
Yeah. So yeah, all that to say is the Aiel are pretty sweet, and we get to see them a little bit later with Matt, right towards the end of the book. But we will get there in due time. I think we got to pick up the pace here. We're gonna be here for hours.
Listen, let's just do it all night.
Okay.
I'll have to get up at 5:30 in the morning.
I mean, we could go all night, but that doesn't mean the people listening will listen to us all night.
They might. We don't know their life.
That's true.
We don't know your life.
Have you ever heard of the content creator? His name's Mauler, Maular, something like that. He does like critiques of film and stuff like that, and he has a podcast. It's called Every Frame a Pause, and they do like these anniversary streams, and they're like days long. That there's just streaming all day. It's crazy. But like he can do an 8-hour stream podcast thing, and people will listen. But we don't have that kind of name recognition. Maybe one day.
We got to start somewhere, Tyler.
That's right.
Start somewhere.
Yes. Anyways, let's jump to Matt and Tom. So in chapter 40, we get some more of Matt. And so they get off of their boat at this place called Erringil. And they get to stay in some, Erringil or something like that. And they get to stay in some stables because there's no rooms available. And they convince the guy to let them stay in the stable. Mm-hmm. It's like Joseph and Mary and little baby Jesus. There's no room in the inn. You have to stay with all the animals. But anyway, there's this. So they're in there, and then there's this woman that comes in to their stable, and she's talking with some guy, and it becomes apparent that these guys are gonna kill this girl, and so Matt, being the hero that he is, even though he says he's not a hero, and this is one of those instances where he says one thing but he acts a different way. So in here on page 406, he says, "I'll help anyone who can pay. Only fools in stories do something for nothing." But then he goes on to just be the hero and save this girl. And then he makes an excuse about why he helped her. It's like, oh, well, I can't remember. Let me get the book and let me just read it. Because it was funny the way he like justifies it to himself, essentially. Because he says that he's not going to help people, and then he goes and helps this girl. So he says something like there was kids in the stable with the girl, and he says bloody children's crying was just getting on my nerves, that's all. So he does the heroic thing, and then he's just like, they were just annoying me, so I just did it so I could get them out of my way. And it's just like, come on, Matt. Like, you can't just acknowledge that you just want to be a good guy. Like, I think he's trying so hard to be like this edgy kind of like, ooh, I'm the gambler kind of trickster kind of guy. But I think deep down, like, Matt's a good guy. I just think it's interesting. Like, he says one thing to himself internally, but then he, acts a completely different way.
I think people do that.
Yeah, they totally do.
All the time. They say one thing and they do another.
Yeah.
That's like the human condition.
Yeah. I just thought it was a hilarious scene.
No. I really appreciate you rereading that. It was making me chuckle. I was like, Matt.
But he does. I think he does that. He does that same kind of situation again at another point in the book. I don't remember the specific part of it, but yeah.
Yeah, I like that you picked up on that. It totally like went over my head. I didn't see that at all. But yeah, the reward for rescuing Aludra the Illuminator is that he gets fireworks.
He does.
And Tom and
he's a little he's a little irresponsible with the fireworks.
Yeah, because he's like opening them. She's like, "Don't open them." He opens them, but he knows he's got to keep them dry so that they will work in the future. Because if they get wet, they will not work.
Yes. So that's Matt and Tom's little cut back to their little story. Then we jump back to Perrin and Moiraine, and basically they're just traveling, and this is where Zareen / Fail, however you say her name, does her hunter's oath that she's going to follow them. Because before she was just kind of along for the ride. She just kind of like jumped on the boat and didn't make an oath. And now she's like officially saying, I will follow you. This kind of thing. Let's see. What else? I feel like there's not like a lot of interesting stuff that happens like in the interim. They're just kind of like making their way. And there's like a few, things.
There's some relationship building between like
Perrin and Zareen. Because they're like, I think she kind of becomes a little bit of a love interest for him towards the end, especially whenever she gets into some peril, and Perrin is like determined to save her life. But we'll get there in a second. There's some gray men that Perrin senses, and he fights them off. Um, Dark Hounds. Perrin.
Yeah, which I didn't really understand. So Moraine goes off by herself, and then they find the Darkhound track on only on stone. They leave marks on stone, and they don't like rain, I think. And so Lan goes after Moraine to tell her about the Darkhounds. And I forget, I think they're invisible. Is that right?
Yes, I think you are correct.
Yeah.
And I think Perrin can see them with his wolf sense. Or something like that. I don't know. I'm a bit fuzzy on the details. Yeah. Matt plays with fireworks.
That's where him and Tom are traveling, and he's playing with them in the like by the fireside. Yeah, I can't. There's not a lot of things. The Darkhound was interesting, and they kind of just give you a little lore on it, but it was like the one chapter out of like all these chapters. It's just like, boom, there's another like thing that happens in this world.
Yeah, I don't think there was a lot of like impactful stuff happening until the very end of the book. It was just kind of just like, we need things to happen until they can get to Tyr. And Robert Jordan was just kind of like filling in like different scenarios because like they do have like dark friends that are trying to get them because the Perrin and Matt are Taveran. So I think there's some way that Baal-Zaman or the Dark One can like sense where they are, and so that they're able to like get tracked in some way. So they're always kind of in danger of the Dark Friends, Dark Hounds, the Murdral, all of these kind of minions of the Dark One are kind of always after. They're after all of the Taveran characters, and all of our three little subplots are people who are Taveran. So Perrin and Matt, and then Rand is off by himself. I mentioned this in the other podcast, but I do still wish we got a few more scenes with Rand, just seeing what he was doing. Would have been nice to see a little bit more of him, but I understand having the books refocus on some of the other characters a little bit more, though.
So I think the next big place that Matt and Tom get to is they get to Camelin. And then we kind of reviewed this at the beginning. We talked about how Matt delivers the letter, and then he finds about the plot of Gabriel, and so he's going to race back to Tyr with Tom, and I think they end up also catching a boat. Yeah.
A lot of boats in this book.
Yep, there are lots of boats, lots of people taking boats. But yeah, that's the next. That's where a lot of information drops. That you learn that Gabriel's behind this plot. Morghese is not fully in charge of her kingdom. She's also kicked out the Aes Sedai because Elaine wasn't there when she went to the White Tower, and so her Red Aja advisor is no longer part of Camelin's council. And then, so that gets, Matt traveling from Camelin. Now he's going to Tyr too. Yeah. And then I think we get Nynaeve, Egwene, and Elaine. They're going to arrive in Tyr, and they're going to find their wise woman. So they get off. So they've been sick on the boat, and they've been like having seasickness, and they're like, whoa. Yeah. And so they just hate, and like the boatmaster like wants them off the boat, like really, he's like, we're we're landing now, and they're like, oh, we'll get off your boat. So they go, and at this point in the book, that Nynaeve and Egwene are not seeing eye to eye on stuff, and Elaine is like, you guys need to like figure this out, because they're just like at each other's throats about every decision that's being made. And so they go and they find a person to take care of the seasickness. And then this woman, let's see.
His name
I
is
forget her name.
Ailhuin. It's Ailhuin.
Yeah, I can't remember how it's pronounced in the book. Alahun. So her and Nynaeve get into it. It's really funny, like the exchange in the book.
Because
It's
they're both wisdoms essentially. So
yeah,
they have like a
and
mutual
then
understanding.
Like, what do you do with a broken head? Or like, how do you put a grown man to sleep? Like, and then you crack the bitter roots, and then it's
like a battle of wits.
Stew, yeah, it's just really funny. So they end up like talking to her, and then like she hooks them up with a thief catcher. Excuse me. Who is going to hunt the Black Aja for them.
Yep.
And they're going to stay there because they're worried about if they stay in an inn that the Black Aja would
Find them.
Figure it out and find them. So that actually is a really good turn of events for them.
Little convenient, but yeah.
Yep. And then I think that's when... Then after that, Matt and Tom arrive in Tyr. And this is where they know that they're trying to find the three
women
training.
Yeah,
the three women. And Matt is going from place to place, and he starts going to every bar that he comes to, every single one. Yep. And he's exhausted, and Tom is like, at the end of the night, like the sun is like coming up, and he's like, okay, come on, like we should go back. And Matt's like, we should go into one more. And they had like skipped a bunch of bars, and Matt was like, he just walked into quote unquote a random bar, and so his luck comes back into play, and he's learning that his luck only deals with randomness. Like he can't use what we would call an algorithm. If I look inside every single bar at every single place, I will find what I'm looking for. For Matt, he's just like, I should check that place out and that place out, and kind of do it at random, and he will get lucky and find what he's looking for. So Komar's in there. That's Gabriel's man who was sent to like hunt the three women, and Matt confronts him, and Matt kills him. He's got like weighted dice, and he's like getting people
his
out
quarterstaff.
of house and home. Oh, I was talking about Komar, the henchman. He's got weighted dice, and he's
Komar has
laughing.
weighted dice. Oh, because he's cheating. Yes, right.
Yeah, he was cheating, and then Matt's luck is like he throws all the crowns. And then he's like, Komar, you better get out of here. He's like, how do you know my name? And then they fight, and Matt ends up killing him.
And then Perrin and Moraine arrive in Tyr. So now everybody's in Tyr.
Mm-hmm.
And Perrin goes and works for the blacksmith for a bit because he just needs to think and bang on some metal. Just to like, I think
that's his happy place.
Yeah, that's where he goes to just process all the things that's been happening to him over the past. What's it been since the beginning of the story? Like 2 years or something? Since the beginning of the...
I have no idea. I just know it's like... How many thousands of pages through the books are we?
It's true. Probably not that many.
Have we hit haven't hit 2,000? Definitely over 1,000 pages.
Yeah, we're over 1,000 for sure. I don't think we've hit 2,000 yet.
Yeah.
But after this,
I guess
after book four, we will, because book 4 is almost 1,000 pages
by itself.
At least in my paperback version, yeah. So, but yeah, so he goes and does some blacksmithing and stuff. Yeah, there was an interesting story here with Moraine talking to I think it's Loyal, and she so Moraine finds out that Balal, who's one of the Forsaken, I think, is in Tyr, and I think he's the one who's setting the trap for. He's in like league with the Black Aja, I think, and he's the one setting the trap for Rand because they're trying to get because they want to have Kalandor and not have Rand have Kalandor, and so that's the whole trap that's being set up. And so Moraine figures this out, and she asks Loyal, I think, about who Balal was. And there was this interesting line where Loyal says he was called the Envious, that he forsook the light because he envied Luz Theron. And I thought that was like an interesting parallel to the story of Lucifer, who was a fallen angel. And Lucifer is, of course, Satan. But at one point, Lucifer was an angel, and he envied the power of God, and he wanted to be like God. And so he left, essentially, and he thought he rebelled and he left. And so I thought that was kind of a similar kind of storyline to the biblical narrative. It's also similar in Lord of the Rings, where Morgoth was one of the I think, I'm not going to get this correct, all of you Tolkien people who know more of the Tolkien than me, but I believe Morgoth was a Valar, and he rebelled against the creator Iluvatar and wanted to create his own beings, because the power of creation was only given to certain people. And so yeah, something along those lines, where like basically like envying the power of other people, and so leaving the person who was the god figure and rebelling and trying to be your own little god, essentially, is the basic storyline for this story here, and then the biblical narrative as well. So just thought that was interesting parallel that I saw.
That's a good. Yeah. And I feel like it was some other, not the Bible, where there was this interesting thing about, maybe it was what's that Kevin Smith movie, Dogma, where the angels were upset because people had choices. So like the angels like were to serve God, and that was like their duty in life. And then I think it's Ben Affleck who goes off and like says how, you know, he loved humans so much that he gave them free will and they get to choose what they want to do with themselves. And you know, I just think that that's interesting, that, you know, angels don't have the choice to serve God, and yet we do. But that's also how we get into heaven and hell. Do we choose to serve God, or do we not choose to serve God? And do we follow Christ? And then two things are just coming to mind from James. It was like, one, so we have to be careful about this, Tyler. One, it says, don't be in a rush to be a teacher of religion, because if you are a teacher of religion, then you are held to a higher standard. Right. I think we talked about this in another podcast.
Yeah, maybe.
And then, if I remember the other one, it'll come to me, I think. There's another James in there that I was thinking about. But I digress. Where were we? We were talking about Perrin?
Perrin and Moraine are in Tyr now. And I don't think, I'm trying to remember. Basically, everything is converging, and they figure out through the Tel'aran'rhiod, correct pronunciation.
You got it.
They basically figure out where the sword is and where Rand's going to be, and so they know where they need to go. But before that happens, the thief, is it the thief catcher? He basically like betrays them, and the Black Aja come and they capture Elaine, Nynaeve and Egwene, and so they are taken to the like the castle or the
Stone
fortification of Tyr.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the Stone of Tyr, right? Is that what it was called?
Yeah, and let's just take a quick second to remember when they first like came up on their ship, how they described it. They said that it's like this huge like fortress style building, and it's like enormous, like it's like so huge, and there is no seams, there's no mortar, like it was conjured with the one power, like out of the earth and out of the stones, and it like summoned like stones from like different parts of the world with their air magic, and then like it brought it here. And there was like, I just think, you know, as a maker, like as someone who likes to make things, and like I've done house repairs and stuff, you know, I look at something and I'm like, how is that put together? Like, why can't I see the seams? Or like, I know that there's seams somewhere and they're hiding, but just to have a structure that is all stone that was like formed to like be this perfect place, I thought that was just like an incredible like idea and concept, like making this like huge fortress, and then it's like there are no weak points in it. It just seems like it was always there, because how else could you have made it besides the one power?
Yeah. I was just looking up, I put in images, Stone of Tyr, Wheel of Time.
Mm-hmm.
I was just looking at a fan art kind of thing of it. Looks interesting. Not sure how canon it is, but it does just look like a big slab of stone, essentially. Very interesting design. Yeah, so that's where they're going, essentially, and that's where everybody is converging. And so after they get captured, so you mentioned that the girls were really sick, so that's why they went to a healer from being seasick. Tom is also sick. I can't remember why he's sick.
It started on the boat, and then they were out in the
while.
rain all night.
Right.
And then that like really put him over the top. He's like coughing and coughing.
But basically Matt takes Tom to the same healer / wisdom person that all of the girls were just with. And she tells Matt about the 3 girls who were captured and taken into the stone. And so that's how Matt figures out where the girls are, which is great for him, because now that's the whole purpose that he went there, was to save them. So now he knows exactly where he needs to go. And so he's like, he basically, like, at the nighttime, he's like, what's it called? Like when a thief like looks, there's like a specific word of when a thief like peruses a location to see like how they're going to enter it, essentially.
He cases the place.
Right. That's it. That's it. Yes. So he's basically casing the place.
I thought you were going to say parkour.
Parkour.
Because like that's just like what I hear. Like he's like Assassin's Creed, like on the top of the rooftops, like maybe parkour.
Maybe the
like
ideal are more like the Assassin's Creed people.
Yeah, they definitely are more than Matt. But I just see them like, he's like, how many blasted people or bloody people are on the rooftops tonight? Because it was like it was like the Aiel, it was like the thief catcher, like everyone was out on the rooftops making their way to the Stone of Tyr.
Yeah, and basically Matt, he still has his fireworks, or some of them at least, from I don't remember the girl's name anymore that we talked about previously, but
Aludra.
Yeah. So he has his fireworks, and basically his plan is that he's gonna use the fireworks to make some kind of distraction. That way he can get into the stone. He's gonna climb the wall, I think was his plan, which isn't a great plan. But Matt does have his Dark One luck, so is probably going to go. Although if he's planning it too much, if it's based on randomness, might not go so well for him. But
and there was also just real quick, in his luck, when he first landed in the in Tyr, he said that he saw the healer's hut in a flash of lightning, like while he was looking in the direction. He's like, how much more random could you get than like where lightning flashes? And like,
right.
So again, like, we're still learning about Matt's luck and how it functions. And sorry, continue.
No, yeah, it's good. Basically, I was just gonna say like he has this plan, but then he meets this other character. He meets some of the Aiel, and they're like, I can't remember like the conversation that they have, but basically the Aiel are there because they figured out that the women are being held, and the Aiel want to save the women because they helped their other brethren earlier in the story. And so the Aiel are there to help them escape. And there's is it the thief catcher? I think it's the thief catcher that meets with Matt. Even though he betrayed the women, he like regrets that basically, and he wants to help Matt get in to save them, essentially, is what happens, right?
Yeah, and I think that he was almost forced to by the Aes Sedai. I think Leandrin had like used her one power on him to get him to kind of confess to some, to who hired him or whatever.
Yeah.
And so yeah, he's feeling guilty, and like all three of them are on the rooftops at the same time. It's like him, it's Matt, and then he's getting caught by the Aiel, and then the thief catcher comes, and he's also like surrounded by the Aiel.
Yep.
And then it's just Matt and the thief catcher, and I think that's when they're gonna go into the stone.
Yeah, because the thief catcher has some like secret passageway that he could get into. So Matt doesn't have to do his crazy firework distraction climb the wall tactic, which may or may not work very well. So we have basically Matt and the thief catcher. His name's Sandar. They are gonna break into the stone, and Matt needs Sandar because Sandar knows the layout of the stone, I believe, is how he convinces Matt to like let him help. Because Matt's kind of like, I don't really know if I trust you or not. Might be not. But I think Matt, like, he knows that he doesn't know where he's going when he gets in there. So he needs like some kind of guide, and Sandar, because he's trying to like make amends for betraying the girls, he wants to help, essentially. And so basically they're going to use the fireworks. They're going to basically blow a hole in part of the wall, and they're going to get in that way. And then from there, they're going to make their way down into the dungeons. Is that correct understanding of what's happening here?
Yeah, I think that's pretty close. I think that Matt intends it to be a distraction, like the fireworks, and then the fireworks are so powerful that he's just like, he makes a doorway into there, and he's got to fight through like the guards and the defenders and stuff. So I don't think his intention is to make a hole, but he does. And then that's the way that they get in.
Well, our plans usually don't go the way you completely expect them to go. So it gets the job done either way, I guess. Yeah, so they get in, and then we actually need to double back because we forgot something about in chapter 53, Flow of the Spirit, because we have Zareen / Fael. She triggers some kind of Tel'aran'rhiod trap, which was meant for Moiraine, I think, correct? Or was it meant? No, it was meant for Perrin, I think, because she went into Perrin's
I think
room.
it was.
No, it was meant for Moiraine.
I think it was meant for Moiraine, and she would have been caught off guard. And basically, it sends the person who triggers the trap into like a deep trance, and they're in Tel'aran'rhiod. But they are like unable to rescue themselves. Yeah.
And so Perrin finds her like basically just laying on the floor, asleep essentially. And so because Perrin has the wolf dream, and so he's able to enter kind of this dream world as well. And basically his goal is to find her and have her, to get her out of the dream world so that she comes back to the physical world. And so Loyal is going to decide to defend Perrin while he is in the dream world. So basically imagine them like Zareen is on the floor sleeping, and then Perrin's going to like go lay on the bed and then also go into the dream world. And then you just have Loyal in the front of the door, like watching like these two people just laying on the floor in this dream world. It's just like a funny scene.
Yeah. And so yeah, Perrin like finds Fail like pretty much
Yeah.
like right away, and he breaks the chains that's holding her down, and then she like disintegrates and evaporates, and he's like, no, and then he's
Yeah,
like,
he has to try a
Hopper.
few different times to get her out.
Yeah, so I think Hopper is being his spirit guide here, because like in
Yeah.
Till I Ran Riad, it's like not only things that are, but I think it's also like past things and future things as well. So like
Yeah.
Hopper died, but he's a dead thing, so but he's there,
Yeah.
and I think Egwene has some like readings in there where she's like keeping up with
Yes.
when she's not with Perrin, she's thinking about him and how he has the Falcon and how he's like finding the Aielman in a cage.
Yep.
So Egwene is like reading things through Tel Ren Riad, which is not like Min's predictions, but she's getting like similar results. Like she's seeing the Falcon thing, she's seeing the Aiel in the cage. So yeah, Tel Ren Riad is an interesting place. There's lots of things going on there.
Yeah, and throughout the book, Egwene gets these dreams, and it's interesting because she gets these dreams, and then you can basically like check in on like what the other characters are doing, because the things that she sees are things that are either are currently happening to those characters or things that will happen to those characters later on in the book. And so it was interesting to like read her dream that she has about the characters, and then you read parts of the book and you're like, oh, that was the exact same thing that Egwene dreamed about. So it's just interesting there to see you get the payoff immediately in the story of what she was dreaming to what the characters are doing. So that was cool.
Yeah, and so I think that takes us to them being trapped, right, in
Egwene
in the Stone of Tyr.
and the women. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So the Black Aja have captured them at the herb hut, and they've imprisoned these three again. And for some reason, Elaine still has her. Is it not Sangreal? It's
Is it the Ta Angriel?
Angreal. Yes, and so it allows her to enter Tel Ren Riad, and she goes and she finds Amiko, who is their jailer, the Black Aja jailer at the time. She apparently the 13 Aes Sedai wove, their spells around the three women so that they couldn't touch the true source. That way, that's how they've been in prison, because if they had the ability to touch the one source, they could break out. So Elaine goes into Tel Ren Riad, and she basically puts a whooping on Amiko, and like and so Amiko's like right outside the cell, and Matt finds her. This is after he's broken in, and she's like sitting in the chair, and he's like looking at her like very strangely. He's like doesn't understand what she's doing, and she's like, help.
She's trapped in a dream. So she's
Egwene,
Egwene basically did to Amiko what the trap did to Fael. It's kind of a similar thing. Like they're both trapped in like this dream world. Mm-hmm. It's like Inception. They went too far in the dream and they can't get out.
Yeah. And so Matt, after he sees Amiko, he's just like, okay, and he goes and he's like opens the door, and then there they are, the three women.
Yep.
And Matt, I think Matt is justified in saying like, why are you guys so upset when I'm like here to rescue you? I've like hopped on a ship, like driven across the boated across the country, broke into this building, fought through a bunch of people, and now you're all mad at me for like getting you out of this fix that you're in. Like totally the wrong, but also on the other end of it, like they've been whipped and abused. It sounds like they've been really hurt by the Black Aja. So I think they're kind of like cornered animals at this point. They're like in their cage, and they're like anything that comes through the door, they're like, "Arr."
Yeah.
And then they even like put Matt in jelly. They like, I think that's the description, where they like scoop him up with like wind energy and like hold him. And then he's like, says later in the chapter, he's like, well, I know where they'll be. Wherever there's men floating in the sky, that's where you'll find these three. And so he's all upset, and then they're like, yeah, I guess you're right. We shouldn't be upset with you for breaking us out of here. And then they just like come out, and someone punches the Black Aja, just like lays her out. In, like,
yeah, Nynaeve does that, of course.
Yeah.
And they need to do that so that they can break the shield that's blocking their access to the one source, to the whatever.
And then Nynaeve heals them when she gets her her power back.
Yep. And that basically concludes the Egwene, Nynaeve, Elaine storyline. And then the last part is Rand's final confrontation with Baelzamon.
The Forsaken and
Forsaken.
Beelzemon, yeah.
And yeah, basically there's like a confrontation. Moraine is actually there as well. So Rand is there, and then Moraine shows up. So there's I feel like at the end of all of these books, there's like this final confrontation, and sometimes it's a little bit confusing of all of the things that are happening around this final confrontation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Do you get the same impression where there's like because there's something where like he enters like a dream world and he fights in the dream world, and then that affects things that happen in the physical world. So it's just.
Yeah, it's always very confusing. Like in the last book, he was like up in the sky fighting like Beelzemon in the clouds. And the first book, he's like teleported to like a different plane of existence, and then they fight, and then he comes back. And like here, like you're learning about. So first, Bilal comes out, and he's like taunting Rand, and trying to get him to pick up the sword, and Rand, I think, forms his own sword. I forget if he forms his own sword, but we've seen Rand make a sword out of light earlier, where he takes out.
He does grab the sword.
Mm-hmm. Is that before Kalendor, or does he just grab Kalendor?
So Bilal is like taunting him, and then Moraine arrives, and then she uses the balefire to like wipe Bilal out essentially. And so then Baelzamon shows up, so now Rand is fighting Baelzamon again for the third time. And this is
book 3. He's got to be fighting him for the third time.
And then this is when he takes the sword, and he goes after Baelzamon, but they go into Talai Ranriad to fight. So they're fighting in like this dream world. Yeah, I'm reading a little bit of this. I copy and pasted a summary in here because it's hard to keep track of all the storylines in your head and all the stuff that's happening, because these books are so big and they have lots of interconnecting stories and plots and stuff. So basically, and there's also like Baelzamon is also Ishmael, and it's not so, and it refers to him in a different name. So remembering that Ishmael is also a Baelzamon, that's another level of like keeping everything straight in your head. But basically they fight, and I'm just going to read this because I don't really remember this part of the story, if I'm being honest, but this is what the summary says. It says, Rand chops Ishmael's black wires and runs Kalendor the sword through his chest. So I can't remember what the black wires meant. Was that like...
I think they're like tethers to the dark energy, like...
Right.
And I think that was also in book 1, like there was like a tether of black from Beelzemon.
Was it like his connection to the true source? The male side of the true source?
So.
And so like does he basically cut him off of the true source and is able to kill him that way.
And he's able to cut him down. Yeah. And also, I just want to pause and go back to when like Rand grabs Kalendor, and like, so it's this Sangreal, so it allows Rand to channel more energy than he's ever like channeled before.
Yep.
And it's like surging through his body, and he feels like he's gonna burn up, and then it's like focused in the sword, and it's like, Robert Jordan's like, it was like running along a razor, like death on either side, but in the middle there was some hope that he would survive, like channeling all this energy. And that's when they're like running through the different realities, like into Tel'aran Riyadh. Like, it was just like a crazy like, yeah, you're right. That was it. You made another good observation, Tyler, with just like, whenever he's fighting Beelzemon, like things are going crazy, like in reality. Like he's like flying around like different realities, and like he doesn't know how he's doing it. All he knows is he's got to kill Beelzemon.
Yeah. Well, maybe that just that
Shaitan
in general just speaks to like the supernatural, like this battle is not just a physical battle. Like it is, like spiritual. It's you know, there's a level of power beyond just your physical prowess. So you're using this magical energy, and maybe that just kind of speaks to like the battle themselves is complex because, you know, the way that like just like everything about the story is complex. And so like unraveling all of like the layers of like who Rand is fighting and who he's actually defeating is kind of just crazy, because this is the revelation at the end of the book, is that Egwene figures out that Beelzemon was just Ishmael and not the Dark One himself. And so this whole time Rand thought that he was fighting the Dark One. So in book 1, 2, and 3 he fights Beelzemon thinking that Beelzemon is the Dark One, but that's not actually the case, because Beelzemon is just Ishmael, who was a Forsaken, essentially. And so Rand is now like, this whole time I've just been fighting one of the Forsaken, just one of the Forsaken, and there's a bunch of them. And I'm not actually fighting the true person who I need to be fighting and defeating. So that just adds like another layer of complexity of like...
I didn't even realize that either. I thought that he, like... I feel like I kind of guessed that Beelzemon was like maybe possessing like these different like quote unquote vessels, as he like he would jump into them, and then Rand would fight him and defeat him, and he would be injured, but like his source, his soul would remain intact to fight the dragon again. So I guess I didn't realize that this guy was kind of the same guy from the 3 books. That's what it sounded like you were saying. No, it's kind of
it
like,
is.
I did not pick that up at all.
Yeah. Well, there you go. That's the revelation at the end. Is that
I feel revealed to. That's crazy.
Yeah. So Beelzemon is Ishmael, and not actually the Dark One himself. And then Moraine is talking about, at the end, naming some of the other Forsakens. We have Lanfear, this guy named Raven. We have Samel, Pa. There's a bunch of other Forsaken. And then there's, at the very end, we have this guy. His name is Barrelane, and he arrives with a note, which is from Lanfear, who's one of the Forsaken. And basically she just says that Lews Therin was mine, he is mine, and he will be mine forever. So it speaks to like the reincarnation kind of idea of he was mine in a time past, he is mine currently now, and he will be mine in all future reincarnations of Lews Therin Telamon, who was the original dragon. So that's just, and Rand is the dragon, so Rand is the reincarnation of Lews Therin. So she's indirectly saying that Rand is hers, and so maybe that's setting up for book 4 of Lanfear is kind of going to be the baddie. Now that we've been fighting Beelzemon for 3 books straight, it may be nice to have some other villainous character. Although it's weird because like the Wheel of Time is interesting in that the the villains, like Baal-Zaman, we're not like fighting him throughout the book. He shows up here and there in like pieces.
He's a string puller.
Yeah, he's a string puller essentially. So it's just interesting that we don't like get like confrontations with Baal-Zaman throughout the book. It's really just like the climactic endings that we really get the final battle.
Yeah, I felt like in the first book, like with the dreams and stuff, he was more pursuing them. Like he didn't know
right,
because
they were dreaming about him. Yeah,
like kind of consistently throughout the first book, and then like we step away from that from books like 2 and 3.
Yeah. So I don't know if that means we can kind of, this is basically the end of the story essentially, and so we can kind of jump into like book 4 predictions here. So I don't know if like, so for 3 books now we've had a final battle with Baal-Zaman. So do you think he's actually dead this time, or is he gonna come back?
He's got to go out at book 13. Like
book 13.
I don't see. Yeah, I don't think it's gonna happen before the last book. Is it 13 books or is it 12?
It's 14.
It's 14. Oh my gosh.
With the prequel, so 15, I guess technically speaking, but yeah, 14 books in the core series. Yeah. So I don't know. I think he's gone. I'm gonna say Baal-Zaman's dead finally. So maybe a book, maybe some of the rest of the series we're gonna be fighting different Forsakens, and then we're not gonna get an actual final battle with the Dark One until closer to the end of the series. Maybe it'll just be like knocking off Forsaken one by one until there's only one left, the actual Dark One. So I don't know. We'll see.
Book 4 is called The Shadow Rising.
Yes.
And I read it years ago, and I just don't remember. So it'll be like reading it for the first time.
That's right. Apparently, book 4 is supposed to be one of the best books in the series. So.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. But the unfortunate thing is, after book 4, supposedly, the series starts to take a little bit of a downward spiral. So a lot of people say the middle books of the series are kind of hard to get through. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens when we get there.
We will make our own.
That's right.
Our own call on that.
I don't want to go in. Well, I kind of already messed myself up by like reading people's comments.
You have. And
sorry, I messed it up for you too. No, I'm
not. I'm just gonna not listen to you. It's all good. Okay. But yeah, like that's one thing I've learned about myself when I go into a classroom with new students. Like, I don't want to know what you thought about this kid. I don't know, like. I want to work with the kid. I want to do it my way. I want to see what works and what doesn't, because as soon as you go in with a preconceived notion, like as scientists, you're going to go to confirmation bias. Right. You're going to find those things, and then you're going to exaggerate those things just to be like, yep, we knew this was going to happen. Here's the proof right here. Yeah. And I try. Even knowing about confirmation bias is hard to. Yeah. I've had many conversations about confirmation bias. Like, I remember one time my wife and I, we were talking about New Year's Eve, and she was like, "Yeah, it's meant to be spent as a couple," and I was like, "No, it was like you're supposed to go out with all your friends and like hang out with your friends." And then so she showed me these pictures of all these people like going out as couples on New Year's Eve, and then I looked at her search thing, and it was like New Year's Eve's couples. I was like, well, of course you're gonna get couples pictures if you put couples in the search box. And then I searched New Year's, and it was like, just a bunch of people hanging out, Right. So confirmation bias. If you look for it, you will find it. That's right. The best thing what I try to do is I try and find 3 sources. And if they all say the same thing, then that's something that you can go with, and it slows down the research process a whole bunch. Sure. But if you're pulling up 3 different articles and they're all like saying the same thing, that's a good way to get at truth versus like pointing to one thing and calling it the end all be all of research. Like this thing said this. You know?
Right.
Come on.
Well, to be fair, it's like a widely known thing in the fandom that the middle books aren't that great. So, but I don't want to like go into those books and be like, oh, I'm just looking for all the things to suck. You know, I do want to give the books a chance. And I mean, the Wheel of Time is like already a slow burn. It's like, I don't know like how much, like I'm already like expecting that from the series. So like it's not like I'm going from, you know, like a super action packed book. And then all of a sudden, like one of the books is just like completely at a standstill. So like I'm already kind of expecting this from that series, but I don't know, maybe those books are like even slower than these ones are. So I don't know, we'll just have to see what happens. But I'm still looking forward to the next series or the later books in the series. But yeah, book 4 is supposed to be one of the best in the series, so that we can both look forward to that. So that's going to be good.
Yeah, for sure.
Other books 4 stuff that I'm looking forward to. Hopefully there's more Aiel stuff happening because they're sweet. I want some more Aiel.
I think we do get that. That
messing people
one of the
up.
other things there.
And I'd also want to see more dream stuff happen. I want to see more Tel'aran'rhian stuff because that's really interesting to me. And then I hope we get some more Rand POV coming back because we didn't get a lot of Rand in this book, so hopefully we get to see more of him. Not that we want to abandon the other characters, because I did actually really enjoy getting to explore some of the inner thoughts of the other characters, especially Matt and Perrin, because we didn't really get much of them in the first two books. So
yeah, their characters are really filling out, and you're like curious about them, and like Matt the Gambler, and I like how he's like a trained staff guy now. He's just like,
yeah, he's like messing people up with that quarterstaff.
Yeah,
and I don't know if that's like his training or if it's just like the Dark One's luck power coursing through his veins.
Yeah, he's unpredictable now. He can hit people with the stick. I think if I would choose like a weapon, I think quarterstaff would be pretty sweet, like Donatello. And then there was also a guy in a Walking Dead who used the quarterstaff, and like you get the reach on it, and like feel like it would be.
I think if I ever play Dungeons and Dragons again, I'm gonna do the quarterstaff build. I'm gonna do like a what are the
monk?
The monk build. The monk maybe. I guess other characters can use the quarterstaff, can't they?
Yeah. Yeah. If you got the strength or is it strength, dexterity? I don't know what the qualifications are.
Probably dexterity with the quarterstaff.
Yeah.
I would think, but I haven't played D&D in a while, so well, maybe.
I'm supposed to get into it like right around Halloween, so that's this month. Oh boy.
It's exciting. It should be fun.
Yep.
Maybe one day I'll get to play more again when I have more free time.
Oh, the search for free time.
It never ends. All right. And do you have any other book 4 things that you want to see or you're looking forward to?
Nope. I'm going to read it when we get there, and then I'll hopefully remember some stuff.
Very good. All right, yeah, that's going to do it for this episode. Yeah, it's been great to get back to the Wheel of Time. I'm looking forward to reading book 4. And yeah, so the next episode, we're going to be jumping back into the Powder Mage trilogy. We did episodes on the podcast on book 1 of the Powder Mage trilogy, which is called
Promise of Blood.
Right, Promise of Blood. So we did 2 episodes on that, and then we'll also do 2 episodes on book 2, which is called The Crimson Campaign. So we'll read to about chapter 21 is what I think where I stopped. So we'll read, we'll do 1 through 21 in the first part, and then we'll do the second half of the book in part 2. And yeah, so that'll be the next 2 episodes, and then we'll talk about what we're doing after that in those episodes. And yeah, if you want to get more content from Pages of Light, you can go to our website, pagesoflight.com, or you can, go to our YouTube channel and find other videos and such. You can also check us out on social media, different platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all those good things, and links for everything to like buy the book if you want to will be in the description, and links to all those social media and stuff will be down there as well. If you enjoyed this podcast and you want to help us out, you can go leave us a review on Apple Podcast, and you can also just tell a friend about the podcast if you like the Wheel of Time and you like discussions of fantasy science fiction books from a Christian worldview. Just tell a friend, and hopefully we can grow the podcast and get more people in a community discussing these things. So should be fun. Gabe, any last thoughts as we close out here?
I would say, can I say the closing line?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, go for it.
Thanks for listening. Remember to keep reading and share the gospel with someone this week.
That's right. Share the gospel with somebody this week. All right, that's going to do it. Have a good night or morning or wherever you're listening, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.
See ya.